According to some of the reliable in-the-knows and journalists when it comes to West Ham news, Lopetegui signed his contract last week. However, the club won't be announcing an appointment until after the Man City game, out of respect to David Moyes. Interesting, that's where we draw the line. We'll speak to managers behind his back. We'll even fly one over from Portugal for a chat at Sullivan's mansion. Announcing it, though, that would be too far. That would be the disrespectful thing to do. Anyway, that's not what we're here to discuss today, because I want to talk about Lopetegui and his contract, and specifically David Sullivan's involvement in getting this deal done, and I hope it's been done properly. I hope David Sullivan has learned from his mistakes, even in just the last 12 months, because I think that could be crucial in the success of the summer transfer window, Tim Steidten and Lopetegui next season. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. But if you're new around here, please do subscribe. It's free and only takes a few seconds, as well as dropping a like on the video by clicking thumbs up. Both things help out the video, help out the channel, and make me very happy. Now, in regards to Lopetegui, I've obviously come round to the idea that he's the West Ham manager next season, and my opinion hasn't really changed from a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, or even 4 or 5 months ago. Whenever Crystal Palace got rid of Roy Hodgson and that article came out that Lopetegui turned down Crystal Palace because he was waiting for the West Ham job. I remember discussing it then because it felt that was the time when it became a bit of a reality, like it could happen. He could become the next West Ham manager. And I was lukewarm on it, and I still am. My opinion hasn't changed. I think he's a good manager. I think he's a safe pair of hands for the board. But I don't think he's going to bring the exciting football that I was craving over the last couple of seasons. I think the football will be better than what we've carved up in the last 24 months. I think at times it will still be boring. However, the big and significant difference is when it is boring, I think we'll have the ball. I think it'll be us that's passing it around sideways and backwards. I think the possession stats will be drastically different next season. So I think there'll still be boring periods, but we'll just have the ball, which is slightly more enjoyable. But I'm on board with it, and you have to. And I see a lot of people say, well, he's a new manager, you've got to get behind him. I just assume everybody will. Even if he's not your first choice, your fifth choice, or your 10th choice, I just assume and like to think every West Ham manager will give him their support and get behind him and hope he does well, because he's the next West Ham manager. But you're allowed to have reservations over whether this guy would be your number one choice. Just because he's West Ham's number one choice doesn't mean you have to also then suddenly go, actually, yeah, I think he's going to be fantastic. You can have your doubts. But I think a lot of people have doubts because of David Sullivan. And this is possibly where my biggest concern for Lopetegui succeeding at West Ham comes into play. It's not Lopetegui's football that concerns me. It's Lopetegui potentially clashing with David Sullivan. I think that's where my worry comes from. And this is where I hope David Sullivan has really learnt from what he's done wrong. He's done plenty of things wrong at West Ham. We can go back to when he first arrived at the club. But just in the last 12 to 14 months, when he started negotiating with Tim Steidten, learn from that. Because it's no secret that those two have clashed, Moyes and Steidten. Now, how much and how bad it was, I'm not sure. I don't believe in all the reports that they've really argued and stuff like that. And he was at the game on Saturday. Tim Steidten was at the game in the stands, not the change room. He's banned from those ones, but he was allowed in the stands. And there was, people were singing to him. The Fabianski song. It's a song that every club sings for A players, isn't it? Super. You know that one. That was being sung to Steidten. He turned around and yelled. But anyway, he was at the game. But all season we've had reports and rumours coming out leaked from the club that they're clashing. Moyes doesn't want the players that Steidten's recommending to him. And that's probably true. There probably was a lot of players Steidten would like to have brought to West Ham, but he couldn't because Moyes didn't want him. But I don't blame Steidten and I don't blame Moyes. I blame David Sullivan for that situation because he allowed it to happen. He hired Steidten without taking control away from David Moyes and putting it solely in the hands of Tim Steidten. The fact that we had Tim Steidten at the club recommending certain players and the manager had no interest in them was always going to happen. Moyes and Steidten were never going to agree on every possible sign. And I think it's a healthy thing. I think transfer by committee at football clubs is a healthy thing. Rather than having one guy just bringing in the players he wants willy-nilly, that can be dangerous. But now he's got his mates here. Now he's got his brother and he's got Maximilian Hans here as well. He's almost forming his own little committee side. And I hope Lopetegui has a say in transfers, but not the final decision. That should lie with Tim Steidten. We need longevity at this club. We need succession planning. And even with the appointment of Lopetegui, it doesn't feel like a 5 to 10 year appointment, does it? I don't think we're going to see a Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola type reign at West Ham. I'd be surprised if he does longer than what David Moyes has just done. Moyes has just finished up a 4.5 year stint at the club. I'd be impressed and surprised if Lopetegui did 4.5 years at West Ham United. It might happen, who knows? That would mean it's been successful. Great. But I just have my reservations. I think we're looking at a 2 to 3 year manager here. But what happens after that? Well, you still want Tim Steidten to be here. You still want him to be here picking the next manager. And I think what Sullivan does, I say today, last week in the contract negotiations, what he does in there will determine this summer's transfer window. Because I like the fact that when Fabrizio Romano did an update a couple of weeks ago, and he said Lopetegui was done, and he said head coach, that words, I welcomed them a lot. I was happy to see that phrase, head coach, not manager, not new West Ham manager, the new head coach of West Ham. That gave me some reassurance that lessons have been learned and Steidten now has more control. And I'm actually inclined to believe he has, because it just makes sense. It makes sense. Because and this obviously depends on what you believe and who you believe. Because I believe Lopetegui was David Sullivan's #1 choice from the start, and the reasons are obvious, we don't need to go into it. However, I do not believe that he was Tim Steidten's #1 choice. That was Ruben Amorim, and I think there's enough evidence there to back up my opinion. However, it's believed that Lopetegui and Steidten have had plenty of meetings, and Lopetegui's been sort of giving his plans to Steidten, what he thinks of the current squad, the summer transfer window, what he would like to do at West Ham, what his plans are for next season, and that's one Tim Steidten round. That is good enough for me. That gives me a lot of reassurance, and I believe it. I'm inclined to believe that, because if he has been eyeing up the West Ham job for quite some time, then you'd imagine he's quite prepared for it as well, and he's got a good understanding of the squad and the players individually. And I would expect he's putting his input in now into the current West Ham team, because there's a few players whose contracts are expiring that need dealt with. Ben Johnson, Divine Mubama, Aaron Creswell, Angelo Bonner. Are we offering them new contracts? Especially now we've got clarity over David Moyes' situation and they know who the manager's going to be next season. Maybe they'll change their mind. We've also got to decide about current West Ham players that weren't at West Ham this season, such as Freddie Potts, Flynn Downs, who I've done a video about over on Patreon. So if you're Patreon, get logged in and check it out. If not, I'll tell you about it at the end of the video. But there's a lot of stuff to be decided now before the summer transfer window, and I hope that Lopetegui and Steidten are working on that as we speak, and I believe they are. But there's only one thing Sullivan could offer Steidten as compromise by not getting his #1 choice, and that is more, and I say complete, but control over the summer transfer window. And again, I'm inclined to believe he's got it because of who's reporting it, and there's plenty of reports that Steidten will be in charge of the summer transfer window, and Lopetegui is aware of this, and I just hope it's true, because we can't afford another January transfer window. And what I should say, by the way, is when I say I was lukewarm on Lopetegui, if it was Tim Steidten's #1 choice from the start, I would have got on board quicker and a lot more. I'd have been like, right, this is the guy. If this is the one that Steidten's identified and said he's the right manager for West Ham next season, that would have filled me with confidence. I said, brilliant, let's get him in. I'd be more on board with it and more excited by it. But I don't believe it was. However, like I said, I do believe he's won round, and it's sort of won me round in the same time. But I just pray that Sullivan has learned his lesson from the Moyes and Steidten thing. We got to a point where Moyes literally had to ban Steidten from the changing rooms, from the training. And I'm sort of team Moyes on that. I get why Moyes felt he had to do it. I do. But I feel like it was a situation created by lack of leadership and lack of clarity from David Sullivan. I feel like the January transfer window was a result of David Sullivan's management of the club, and in particular management of the Steidten and Moyes situation. We cannot have that again. We need this club being a far better place going into summer transfer window, because it is yet again another big one. But if we get it right, and it's a big if, I do believe that next season we could challenge for European spaces. especially not having European football next season. Regardless of who the manager is, park Lopetegui for 1 minute. No matter who we brought in, the next manager should be getting asked or told, your job is to get us into European football. Next season, you've got a good core of players to work with. We've got a healthy transfer budget, which we should do. We should have a little bit of wiggle room in the transfer market this summer, and not many Premier League clubs do. A lot of Premier League clubs are up against it already. Wolves need to sell before they can buy. Everton need to sell to adhere to PSR, not even before they can buy. They need to sell full stop. Forest are up against it. There's a lot of clubs already restricted with what they can do. So whoever can spend money in this transfer window is in a position of advantage, and West Ham are in there. We've got a good squad. I do believe that. I know, is it old? Yes. Does it need a bit of work? Yes. But I do believe we've got a good first 11, and the bench is okay, and that's the bit that needs work. But next season it has to be European football, and I think in order for us to go and achieve that, we have to get the manager appointment right, which Lopetegui is capable of leading this team to European football. He is. He's shown that with Sevilla. He's a good manager. But we also have to get the summer transfer window right, and I think that comes down to how David Sullivan has dealt with the contract negotiations with Lopetegui and also Tim Steidten. And I just pray that Sullivan has learnt his lesson, because if he has, this summer transfer window could be a big one and an important one for West Ham. However, if he's got it wrong, if David Sullivan has done David Sullivan things, then we could have a car crash of a summer transfer window again, but also we could have a car crash of a managerial appointment, because David Moyes was a bit of a yes man for the board. He came back in when we rehired David Moyes. It was the two desperate Daves. David Sullivan just needed somebody to come in and keep us up after the Pellegrini, and David Moyes needed a job in football. And surely, ideally, he wouldn't have come back to West Ham, a club that he felt he should have stayed on after replacing Bilic and keeping us up. And we said, no, you're not good enough. We're going to go get Pellegrini. And we've done it. We're doing it again, essentially. Since, sorry, if football's not good enough, we're going to go get another guy. But he came back, he done really well. But we cannot have another car crash appointment of a manager. And while I think Moyes was a bit of a yes man for the board, and obviously the thing with Tim Steidten, it wouldn't have been enjoyable for Tim Steidten. Do you know what? It wouldn't have been enjoyable for David Moyes. I don't think Moyes would have enjoyed having somebody trying to do their transfers with players he doesn't want. It doesn't work. Nobody wins. Because when I look at the January transfer window, I refuse to just blame David Moyes. I just don't believe Moyes was happy with the way it ended. Oh yeah, Ben Ram and Fornals, two players I will actually use, and I have used all season. They're both going and nobody's coming in. I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe Tim Steidten was happy with it. Nobody, with the experience he has, would have looked at that squad and thought, brilliant, we're in a better place now. The only guy I think would have been okay with it was David Sullivan, because of the money coming in on the January transfer window. But Lopetegui, he won't stand for that. If that happens again, I think if he was the manager of West Ham in the January transfer window, I wouldn't be surprised if come the 1st of February he walked out. He said, right, stuff you, I'm off, I'm not putting up with this. We have to get it right, otherwise this could be bad. But I am optimistic, and I'm going to whisper it quietly. I'm optimistic that maybe we have got it right, that maybe Sullivan has actually given Steidten power, and Lopetegui knows his place, which is you're the head coach, you're in charge of what happens on the pitch. But off it, this guy, Scarf Man, he's in charge of he wasn't wearing a scarf on Saturday, it was way too hot on Saturday. No scarf, just a West Ham suit. Scarf Man, he's in charge of the summer transfer window, because like I said, get everything right, we could have a good season next season. Get it wrong, we might have a manager by the time the season kicks off. Joke, that was just a joke. That was just a joke. Anyway, right, I'm going to disappear. Before I do, just want to point in the direction of Patreon, patreon.com/hamsterchat. If you can afford £1 a week, you can join up to Patreon from £3.60 per month. You get more content over there. There's plenty of video content, as well as other benefits like our prediction competitions. Obviously, there's only one game left, but there's a Lucas Paqueta shirt up for grabs. Got a monthly giveaway, more signed shirts up for grabs. You get discount at our online store. But most importantly for us is it supports the channel. It allows us to keep creating content, one video per channel per day. So you get 2 videos from Hammers Chat on YouTube for free. I know there's adverts and brand deals, but generally speaking, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. So if you can support us, it'd be much appreciated. Patreon.com/Hammers Chat. And like I said, there's a video up there from myself today discussing Flynn Downs. Basically, I've watched him a few times this season, but I watched him yesterday. He was fantastic. He was fantastic. But I'll go into more detail, and also what I think Flynn should do for next season, because he's made interesting comments in the last 24 hours. Anyway, I'm going to shut up and disappear. If you've enjoyed this video, please drop a like on it by clicking thumbs up, subscribing you around here. But fingers crossed, David Sullivan has learned his lesson, and it's Steidten and Lopetegui. I've called him Lopetegui. Steidten and Lopetegui have clarity, and off the back of that, they can have a relationship. Off the back of that, maybe Steidten will be allowed in change rooms again, but off the back of that, we can have a successful summer transfer window. And off the back of that, it's the domino effect, the ripple effect. If you tune into James Alcott, the domino effect is that next season we can have a good one. And that'll stick 2 fingers up to TalkSport, because they've got their knives out for Lopetegui, and he's not even confirmed as West Ham manager. Out of respect to David Moyes, of course. I'll catch up with you tomorrow.